Everyone knows that feeling, wanting to experience more stories, but struggling to find the time. That's where Audible changes everything. With over 1 million audiobooks and Audible originals, there's a story waiting to spark anyone's imagination. Take The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, the gripping psychological thriller that's keeping listeners on the edge of their seats. Imagine unraveling its mysteries during your morning commute, or losing yourself in its twists and turns while doing household chores. That's the magic of Audible. It transforms daily routines into opportunities for thrilling discoveries. The best part? Members get access to thousands of included titles, with new content added regularly. From bestsellers to hidden gems, every genre imaginable is at their fingertips. And with one easy-to-use app, switching between favorites or discovering new passions has never been simpler. There's more to imagine when you listen. Start a free 30-day Audible trial and get your first audiobook free at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Now it's time for Inspirational Women, and my guest, Kisha Stewart, a wife, a mother of 3, a nurse, and a heart attack survivor, an event that happened after the birth of her second child. Kisha is not an anomaly. The statistics for this happening are high for women, particularly Black and Hispanic women. So we are really fortunate to have Kisha write about her experience. Sonata for a Damaged Heart is her book, and to have her join us this morning to share some of her important story. Kisha Stewart, good morning. Thank you so greatly for being with us today.
Thank you for having me today, Kate.
You know, actually, as I say that, thank you for being with us. It has even a greater meaning than just the fact that we are connected for a conversation, because the reason we're here is to talk about an experience that happened to you in 2011, and you could easily not be here physically with us any longer, right?
That is correct. There were many instances that evening in which could have gone horribly wrong, and I wouldn't be here with you today.
But here you are, thankfully, which I think you even have philosophized about that, is since that heart event did not take your life, you were spared. There must be a reason for it, and you're now really living out that reason, that purpose, and joining us today to share the story.
Yes, I feel like it would be a travesty for those who before me didn't have the opportunity for a second chance of life if I didn't live my second chance. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I tell my story.
And the book, we should just mention right at the outset, and we shall get back to that, Sonata for a Damaged Heart, a young mother's journey of survival after a near-fatal heart attack, and which itself is just, bone-chilling. But the fact that you were so young, who would even think of a young woman suffering a heart attack? But you went on to find out it's not that uncommon. So that would be a good place maybe for us to begin to share some of that story with us, if you would, Kisha.
Sure, sure. So back in October of 2011, 2 weeks after I gave birth to my second child, I had what they call a SCAD, which is a spontaneous coronary artery dissection. So basically, in layman's terms, it means that an artery, a major artery in my heart, actually tore, and that caused me to have the quote unquote widowmaker heart attack. My artery was completely occluded, meaning blood couldn't travel to certain areas, and that's why I had the heart attack. But at the time, I was 31, I was a nursing assistant, and this is my second baby, and I didn't know women had heart attacks during or even after pregnancy. I didn't know that that was something to look out for. And when it happened to me, I was in such shock that I didn't know. That particular evening, I was out at a dinner party with some friends celebrating, being out, number one, without baby.
Yeah.
And, number two, just being able to be around and celebrate the fact that, I just did give birth to my second. That whole day, I was feeling quite fatigued, but that's not out of the ordinary for, a new mom. And I kind of just dismissed it. And by the time we got to the dinner party, I was feeling a little disoriented, a little lightheaded. But again, I just figured, oh, well, I'm up all hours of the evening.
Hmm.
So maybe that's what it is. And maybe I didn't drink enough water or eat enough. But as the evening continued to progress, I had other symptoms and signs that were making things a little worse. As I was having conversation, I couldn't focus. I got really hot, hands got clammy. I went to the bathroom, kind of splashed water on my face. When I got back to my friends, I had that sharp pain in my chest. And it felt like my chest was just in a vice, just being crushed. I didn't know what was happening. It was hard for me to breathe. I had that tingling and numbing down the left arm. And then I had pain radiating to the back of my neck and up through my jaw. At that point, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know it was a heart attack at that time, but I knew it was something bad. I don't have a family history of heart attacks or heart disease. I was an athlete majority of my life. I danced for 17 years. I ran track. I didn't have the normal risk factors, and I was 31. So I didn't have those typical risk factors. My husband rushed me to the hospital where I was still nauseated and vomiting, still breathless. When I entered the ER, the woman, the receptionist, I told her everything that was happening. First and foremost, I told her I was having chest pain. And she proceeded to ask me more questions. And I told her I was at a dinner party. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, it's your first time out since having baby. Oh, it's probably a panic attack or anxiety. You should be fine." And because I knew my body, I knew myself, I knew how my body reacted to anxiety, I knew that wasn't it. What I was experiencing definitely wasn't attributed to that. And it was my second baby. So it's not
Right.
like,
Right. Exactly.
it's not like I didn't know what to expect.
Yes.
Um, but I insisted that I wanted to be seen, and she kind of rolled her eyes and pointed to the ER waiting room area and told me that I could go sit and wait to be called back. So roughly 30 minutes went by before I got called back into triage to be checked out. The EKG was inconclusive. The tech and the nurse that were in there, they didn't know what was happening. I was still vomiting, still breathless, still having the chest pain. And then suddenly, an angel, a more senior nurse, walked by the bay that I was in. She looked at me for maybe 2 seconds and said, "She's having a heart attack." And then immediately everything clicked. And I was just in such shock. Now I knew what it was. Now I understood what it was. Didn't understand why or what exactly happened. But it was a moment in which I had to fight. I had to fight for my life because by the time they recognized the fact that I was having a heart attack, it was probably about an hour after I first had those first signs and symptoms.
Right. And time, we know, is of the essence when it comes to anything dealing with the heart in that way. And here you were made to wait in the waiting room and that sort of thing. I mean, again, it's a miracle, I think, that you are here with us to talk about this. And again, the reason that your life is in this mode is to be able to share the story and encourage others to be more informed.
Right, exactly. I remember afterwards, like I said, this was 2011. There wasn't a lot out there for me to be able to grab onto. Human nature, we want camaraderie, we want someone to connect with, and I couldn't find that at the time. One of the reasons why I wrote the book is because I felt so alone, so isolated. I felt so different from everyone else. And there was no one that was around me that had any type of experience, being young and having this type of medical issue happen to them. Even the support groups at the hospital, they had men and women who were in their 60s and 70s, they lived their lives. They weren't just getting married and just having kids and just starting a career where I was. So how could they ever understand truly what I was feeling, what I was going through, the hardships and the hurdles that I would have to go through in order to continue to survive?
Right. What was just amazing to me, but maybe it's not so unheard of, that after suffering this heart attack, that your feelings of depression, I guess I was thinking, oh, I survived. I should be grateful for this. Not meaning so, but you were feeling this despondency. And actually, it was enlightening to me then as to why that might happen. And that was a big part of your journey, is what you learned from that, and what it means, particularly, I think, for Black women, maybe for other cultures as well, but certainly because it happens more frequently, correct, in the
Correct.
Black community.
Correct. So, in general, cardiac related issues after pregnancy are very prevalent within minority populations. We have a tendency, I believe it's 3 to 4 times more likely to experience cardiac related issues after pregnancy and die from it. Um, so, yeah, I mean, it's something that truly needs to be talked about. Maternal health in general in the United States is our maternal mortality rate is higher than any other developed nation, which is a shame. This means that children, families are losing mothers who are in their prime giving birth. How can we continue as a society
Right.
with those types of statistics, and as a Black woman, a lot of times you find, or I have found, that because of my race, there's a bias. There's this tendency to think that, Black women or Hispanic women are loud and they're dramatic. And that's not necessarily the case. So, I fight for those who can't fight for themselves. If I were a more timid woman, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, because I would have left that ER. I would have gone home. I would have probably just taken an ibuprofen or something and said, I'll be fine in the morning. And I wouldn't have woken up.
Right. Oh, yes. And that's why this education is so critical. And I'm grateful to you for speaking up, for using the platform of a book, being having your website so that people can connect and learn, and that you keep moving forward and advocating.
Yes. I mean, it's like you said, you wouldn't have think that, I would go into a depression, but really you have to grieve
Mm,
your old self. You're
yes.
no longer that person, because now you have a new normal that you have to get used to. You have certain things that you might not be able to do any longer. And you have to consider more health risk issues, for your future, for your family's future. I had 2 young boys, and at the time, I wasn't able to pick up my newborn son.
Right.
I couldn't lift anything more than 10 pounds. Well, when I gave birth to him, he was 8 pounds, 13 ounces. By the time 2 weeks passed, he was already at 11, 12, pounds.
Right.
So, and it was very, very critical that I follow the guidelines put forth to me, because you don't know what can happen. And that whole notion of, oh, it happened when I was at my happiest moment. I was
Mm,
with friends, I was out, I was laughing. So that kind of runs through your mind, and it just kind of sits like a hamster on a hamster wheel, because you just keep thinking it can happen again. It can happen again. It doesn't matter where I am. It can happen again.
mm, yes. Oh, that is such a challenging, more than challenging space to be in. To not, you don't know if you should walk out the door, because what might you encounter? Is it safe? Oh, it does make sense, given then the whole picture. So again, that's part of the story that's so critical to tell, let someone else know. Yeah, what you're experiencing, yes, totally to be expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, as women, we have a tendency to want to do everything.
Mm.
And I was very independent. I'm the oldest child. I'm the only girl. So, I was kind of raised to be this independent woman. I come from a long line of independent women. And then I was suddenly put in a position where I had to depend on others. And that wasn't a position that I was used to being in.
Mm.
That wasn't a position that I wanted to be in. I wanted to take care of things, including myself, and now I couldn't. So a lot of that, people don't realize and recognize that after you have some sort of medical issue, it doesn't necessarily have to be a heart attack. It could be cancer. It could be, anything else, any sort of medical related issue. There is a point in time in which you have to grieve yourself. There's a point in time in which you have to accept the fact that you need help. Women have a tendency to feel like they're a burden on other people, which is a fallacy because our family and friends want to help us. They want to see us better. So we have to, work better at not spreading ourselves too thin and giving ourselves grace. Give ourselves grace because we are human. We are not super women. That superwoman syndrome. I can take on it all. I can have it all. It takes a village, and there's a reason why they say it takes a village. It's not just to raise children, it's to help each other as well.
Yes. Community is so critically important. And as you said, though, for you to open yourself up to that, so you still had another hurdle to overcome, is to be that accepting.
Yes, yes. It's taken me many, many years before I was really comfortable in my truth because I had to accept that what happened to me actually happened,
Mm-hmm.
that I was vulnerable, that there's nothing that I could have done to prevent it. Uh, so, in order to accept, you have to learn how to love yourself. And that was a long process because for a long time, I felt that my body betrayed me.
Mm-hmm.
There was like this sense of just anger, and I was angry with God, I was angry with myself. That was a very long journey. Eventually, you come out the other side. And for me, it was the notion that so many others passed away before me. They didn't have the second chance that I have. So I had to do something. And then I turned my whole thought process from, why did this happen to me to I survived. Now what? What do I do with this?
Right.
I can't just sit back and let life happen before me. I have to act. I went back to school for my nursing degree. I graduated valedictorian of my class. I was still, the first year I was in heart failure and I kept that to myself
Yeah.
just because I had, this drive, this passion. I felt that, well, if I can't predict what's going to happen to me tomorrow, I'm going to do what I can today. I'm going to do everything I can so that my children are left with some sort of legacy because it can be taken away. Life can be taken away the following day.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave this earth without my children seeing how I fought, without my family, seeing what I did to try to push through and survive.
Right. Oh, I'm in awe of your survival and your determination and sharing the stories so that we see the ebb and the flow and the ups and the downs that you go through, and to see the statistics of how many people, how many women particularly, die from a heart condition that they don't even know that this is going on.
Right. Unfortunately, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of women, and that's including all cancers combined. It kills more people or more women than all cancers combined. I mean, that is a hard pill to swallow.
Mhm.
And it's the number one killer of new moms.
And
I mean, it's still so shocking. And yet, 48% of women who have heart disease don't know that they have it. They
right.
don't even know that they're walking around with it.
Yes. Exactly. And that's where this is such an important awareness because we think of it, oh, it's an old people's disease. And, but no, at 31, you suffered this major heart attack and other women do too. And the balance is skewed in that it's minority women who suffer from that more so, correct?
So, with SCAD in general, more white women are affected by SCAD. But when it comes to cardiovascular diseases, minorities are definitely more affected than white women. So, it just depends on specifically what you're speaking about.
Mm,
Uh, but I mean, overall, it's a shame to lose one to anything, you
yes.
know? And as for me, I believe, as far as minority populations are concerned, we don't necessarily talk about our medical family history. Now, that wouldn't have made a difference in what happened to me. What happened to me was um, hormonal, they believe. But in general, cardiovascular diseases, uh, they occur more frequently in minority populations. So you have to know what your family history is. Diabetes runs in my family. I've known that since I was little. My mom was a nurse practitioner. So she was both my parents were very, very adamant about raising us a certain way, raising us to make sure that we had healthy diets, making sure that we were always active. And they always pushed that on us, and they pushed education is your power, knowledge is your key. So I think writing the book, I had that in mind, that I wanted to empower people with this information. And it's not just for people who had heart attacks. I think my journey um, can help anyone who's going through any hard time of their life. Anyone who has
Yeah.
faced adversity, whether you're a woman, whether you're a man who has faced adversity. There's different themes that run throughout it. And I'm just so grateful that my husband pushed me to write my story and to share my story.
I think I dare say all of us are once we realize what the story is to understand that you know here we are opening up your heart literally I guess to sharing what went on. I mean there's such important information here to your experience that we all can embrace and that we if it not for us personally it might be someone else because the statistics are like so high 1 in 3 I think so
Yes,
yeah.
1 in 3 women die. 1 in 3. So that's a woman every 80 seconds. And yet, 80% of cardiovascular diseases can be prevented just by education and lifestyle changes.
So that does help. There are situations though which is how you ended up in your case because you were in great shape. However,
Right.
whatever it was, well, you said they think it was hormonal. How do you control that? You don't. Some of those things are totally out of our control. But what you can do is what you are doing is advocating, writing this book, making sure that there's as much information as we can possibly have.
Oh, yeah. And I love to just get across the fact that you have to listen to your body. Your body is a beautiful machine, and it will let you know when something is wrong. So you have to make sure you're following up on your doctor's visits. You have to make sure that you know what your baseline is and what your body is normally. So that way, if something is wrong, you can use your voice to fight for your life. I have a quote that I often share in speeches or interviews. If they think that women are dramatic, then be dramatic. show them what dramatic really is, because no one's going to fight harder for your life than you.
And not to be afraid. This was the thing that I found painful. Your experience with the medical system. First, it was just at the first entry and eyes rolling. It feels so unacceptable. You had a really good cardiologist, but then you couldn't go back to see that same doctor because of the whole insurance rigmarole stuff that goes on. That sort of inequity that exists is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness for the man who saved my life. He had seen one other SCAD case the year prior in his 30 plus years of being a cardiologist. So I'm grateful for him. But yes, it's unfair how insurance works. The cardiologist that I was assigned to afterwards, he was just not on the same page as I was. He wanted to try to put me in your typical categories for someone with heart disease, but I wasn't fitting in those categories.
Yeah.
I would walk in and everyone in the office was twice my age. And I would be looked at and gawked at because I was so young at the time. So I also like to let people know, in order to advocate for yourself, you have to know that you can fire a doctor.
Yes. Right.
It's a service, just like, when you go to a restaurant, you're paying for a service. And it's okay if you and your doctor don't get along. You can get a second opinion. It's the practice of medicine. It's not, I do this and I know everything 100%. Impossible, because there's medical breakthroughs every single day. So find yourself someone who listens to you, who's willing to go that extra mile so that the both of you, yourself and your physician, can be together as partners on your healthcare team. You have to take control.
Yes. See, that those are words of wisdom that are so important to hear, because I think sometimes we might have that feeling of, holding the doctor in higher regard, that of course they know the answers. But like you said, no, we have to sometimes go shopping around to find that right fit.
Right. And, with insurance, obviously, sometimes you're a little limited, but that's okay. Make it work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what I had to do. And at the time of my heart attack, it was during, the Obama Care Act. And it was just one of those things where I knew that I wasn't going to qualify for any sort of insurance. So I had to go on Medicaid at the time. So it was difficult because not everyone takes Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of navigate the waters, but I did it. And, it is possible.
Right. And to really understand all the innuendo and all the possibilities, I say read this book, Sonata for a Damaged Heart. I am, like you say, you're so grateful to your husband. I'm glad he encouraged you to write it, because it's learning each other's stories that really, I think, edifies us, and we're going to really just become so much better informed.
Yes, I hope so. And that's one of the reasons why I volunteered with the American Heart Association, because I found the more that I shared, the more women contacted me and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know. Thank you for sharing your story
Mm-hmm.
yesterday." Or, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know. But because you shared your story, I saw these symptoms in my mother and I told her to get checked out." So I'm grateful for that. I'm so, so grateful for that.
And your website is another great source. We can find out more about your book there, but more about your story and be connected with you.
Yes. So my website is called KishaandScad.com. And I have blog posts where just, random things that I go through during my life. Just like talking about the holidays or talking about the new year, and how, I'm focused on making sure women are not dismissed. That's my goal this year: to educate, to advocate, and to say, don't dismiss us. Look at us.
I'm looking. You are a beautiful woman, and I am so grateful that everything worked out as it has, that you survived. That was 2011, so here we are 12 and a half years later, and you're feeling well?
I'm feeling well. Over the last 12 and a half years, I've had my ups and downs. Nothing is ever perfect.
Mm.
I'm not perfect. I've had my own struggles, just taking care of myself and recognizing the fact that self-care is not selfish.
Mm.
But today, where I sit, I am doing great. I'm loving life. I'm able to enjoy my husband and my children and my friends and my family. And I'm happy to be on this side.
Well, I am so grateful to you that all that happened, you've really transformed it into being something so constructive, both for yourself, first for yourself, but also then it's helping the rest of us. You are really someone to be admired. Again, I'm so grateful to you, Kisha Stewart.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate it.
That brings us to the end of a very full hour of Inspirational Women with Kisha Stewart and Sunday Morning Magazine with Barb Oliver from Sound Foundations Northwest. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I will get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or to share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the Listen tab, then Podcasts, then either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of reaching out and being connected to the community. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.